10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, welcome back to A Quest Through Karn. This is episode 1, part 3. We're finally finishing the book Dragons of Autumn Twilight. I'm going to introduce everybody and we're going to get into it. You know, I got Trev next to me, Mr. Beckermin. I got Tony under me, and then Jesse, Mr. Goodday to his I guess his right, or maybe be left. I don't know. How you guys doing tonight? Y'all ready to get into this?
Heck yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
I'm gonna say hi to the chat. Say hi to the chat real quick. It won't take that long, and we'll greet them as they come in. Of course, I got brother Trev and making the tower joke. I love it. You know, different weekend. And Steve, what's up, Steve? Brother Steve from that other weekend, and he's got the right. You know, the dragons. And we got Tony, brother Tony, and that's everybody for now. All right, let's get into it. So we ended on Book 2, Chapter 9, Suspicions Grow, the Slamori. I'm not going to go into detail into what we covered before. If you want that, that's why we got previous episodes 1 and 2. Check those out if you want to catch up on that. So Gilthanis, and I'm probably going to, it's going to give me a second to catch up to these names again. Gilthanis, there we go. Thanks, man. Gilthanis disappears and Eben spreads doubt towards Gilthanis. Gilth comes back, talk of the pursuer. They make it to the door of the Slamori, told it's the burial ground of Kith-Canaan. They leave a slit to trap the follower who has been following them, the pursuer, and camp right inside the entrance. Goldmoon explains Tiki is a virgin Caramon. It's this that we had this previous, you know, encounter in the last chapter with Caramon and I'm drawing a blank. What's her name?
Tika?
Tika. I just said it too. So basically, Goldmoon is pulling him aside and having to explain that you know, that she is not just a woman, but she is kind of a virgin in the same sense. But, you know, it's kind of one of those situations, tell him without telling him kind of thing, which I really appreciated the way that was brought about, you know. What's up, Papa?
Oh, I was about to send him a direct message, but yes, Papa, just whatever, and send me the bill.
There you go.
Just tell me what I owe you. Shoot me a message, and I'll get it to you. But now I'm talking about books, because I read
and not random books.
Not random.
Okay, Gilthanis explains his innocence to the group. Morning comes. They still don't have the follower has not made their presence known through the slit in the door. They have 2 directions to go. One rooting specifically to evil. They end up going left, away from the evil. They come to a throne room with skeleton with a crown. It ends up being the crown, the throne room of Kith-Canaan. They find an enchanted sword, but don't touch it. Trying to find a way forward, they are ambushed by a giant slug. Lorena appears. She ends up being the follower, the pursuer. Tanis loses his weapon, but is given the enchanted sword during the entanglement. They push the slug back. They go back to the cross section. Tanis yells at Lorena. Race notices Tanis' sword. Kith-Canaan gave him the sword. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack in that. It's honestly one of my favorite chapters in the book. It's the whole, like, I want to say it's the setup of like the group knows they're being pursued. They don't necessarily know if it's good or bad at this point, kind of thing. What's up, Wellboard? Thanks for stopping by. Um, the whole thing with the slug, the whole, there's this whole betrayer situation, which honestly, I'm not a big fan of that situation, or the way it's brought about. I'm not a big fan of that situation, but the way they use it in the book, I do like it, like the way they play around the whole betrayal with the group. But the slug situation and the way Lorana shows up, and there's just a lot to unpack. And then you got the whole Kith Kanan thing. You got lore here. You have enchanted swords. Does anybody want to talk on this before I bring up my first question of the night? Because I do have a question.
Yeah, that slug is so. If you play D&D, there's always every once in a while you just struggle against some random creature you thought you were gonna roll, right? Like I once almost lost an entire party to an enchanted painting just because we were rolling like shit.
And to Beckerman's, regard, that is a natural thing. Y'all just all have bad dice rolls, and you end up getting killed by like you said, an enchanted painting, or in this case, just
Pack of kobolds.
an oversized slug. The
Gelatinous cube.
Yeah, it's funny being a first-time reader. I didn't know what to expect. We're in catacombs, basically. Kind of a funeral like dungeon, let's just say. Okay, because everything here is like this part of the area is just a fancy like burial area for kings and queens. Yeah, basically. Okay, so I didn't know what was going to expect, especially because before this we run into other, like, and then past this we run into some other things that are a little more fancier than the slug. So I mean, I think it's like, for me, it was kind of perfect, because it's like, what would you expect to be in a tomb? You kind of would expect some variation of a creature like this, maybe at the worst, like a vampire or werewolf or something like that that's hiding in the tomb, but that's like more extreme. So like it being this giant slug, the way and I'm drawing a blank at his name, his Task, the way Task kind of like, when they first start hearing the noise and he gets all excited because it's something different, and then when he sees the slug, he's like, oh, I wonder what it feels like, and he wants to get close to it, and he's like, yeah, I wonder what it eats, and Flint's like, it eats us.
Yeah.
What's up, Kenny B? Thanks for stopping by.
If I was naming the chapters, and I know they have multiple chapter names on each one, usually about 3, I would have done one of them as Tombst gave me this sword.
Well, I think that, okay, so granted, that is like, I think 2 or 3 of the other chapter names is around that, because I will say for chapter names, they're really like on the point specific. Like, he was writing the chapters and he was like, what am I going to name this chapter? And he just saw a sentence and he was like, that's the chapter name.
Yeah.
I grabbed the sword. Yeah. Like this one, it's like Suspicious Grove, the Slamori, He could have just titled it the Slamori, like, I mean, it's pretty ominous in itself. We already know we were going there, kind of thing. So actually my first question of the night is based around the slug, actually, because, okay, so we're going to span forward a little bit, but we do find out that this whole tomb has traps that are laid out to prevent people from making it to this treasure room and this throne room. But they're not just like bad guy traps. They're traps that were set up by these elves to protect their dead. But the first trap we run into, I wouldn't say it's a trap. Let's not call it a trap. Let's call it an encounter. Because the slug isn't necessarily a trap, but how did it get there? Why is it there? Like, this thing is magically sealed. They had to magically open it. We know it does connect to something, but it connects to a massive fortress, like in 2 different directions, above and below, but nothing that like leads to the outside. So it kind of like, I mean, just general thinking, it leads me to believe that either somebody left it there, put it there, brought it there, kind of thing. So Is there any thoughts on why the slug is there?
Not really.
I got the feeling that it probably just found this dank place where it could snack on critters and get big with no natural predator. I mean, what? It's sharing an apartment with a ancient dead elvish king.
Kind of goes into the thing, what was it eating? You know, like, and it is asked in the book, but they don't run into anything else living in this part until they find like the stairwell, and they're talking about they go deep down kind of thing.
That's part of the security measures, I guess. A slug wouldn't leave anything behind.
Oh, I don't think that it was
that's true
put there. I just think it probably moved in.
I think it
Yeah,
feeds off
Yeah,
adventurers. Definitely feeds off adventurers.
yeah, for sure.
Abandoned pet bastards do that all the time. I can go with that. Maybe it was Kith Kanan's like trusted pet,
Yeah.
and it's guarding his tomb, and it's just been there forever. And like during Kith Kanan's time, it was like little bitty, and it's grown massive over the years. You know, that's what I'm
It's
going
like the
with.
size of a dog.
It's been
Right.
eating good.
Feeding
Or,
on
I mean,
lost,
Okay, so
elder
it doesn't.
dwarves.
Okay, so we can even get more specific. It didn't come from Kith Kanan's room. It comes from the Dark Elf's room because that's where she's in. So maybe it was her pet, you know, and it just no, I don't know. Okay, I'm going. It's the one. It struck me because it's the one thing that isn't a trap in this whole scenario. It's the one like kind of like random variable that happens. Everything else is like planned tomb wise. Just curious. All right, so we're going to move on. Chapter 10, the Royal Guard, the Chain Room. They take the path to the right. They enter a chamber holding the Royal Guard. They are active specters. Using Goldmoon's necklace, she puts them asleep. They pass through and they come to another chamber with two ways, a massive chain. It leads to the chain room. They take the northern door and it opens up to the treasure room of Kith Kanan. There is a dark elf who protects the treasure. In a panic, they backtrack. They make it to the cellars of Pax Darkus. Fizban and Tass are missing during this whole backtrack altercation. Again, these are very sped up, versions of what's going on. There's actually a lot that happens in between, but basically this is me like, okay, this happens, because like honestly, there's another part in this like when they make it into the dark elf room and they all freak out, right? Tanis is, oh my God. And Raised is like, oh, fuck, F that. Everybody back out. We have to get out of here quick. If she speaks, we're done.
Nobody's listening to Race either. He's like, hey, I got bad vibes in this direction. Please don't go this way. And they're like, we're going to go this way.
Right. But then, like, okay, as they're doing that and they're backtracking, like, we get Fizban that pops up and he's like, no. These little youngins, you freaking out for nothing, and he pulls out, like, Goldmoon's medallion and that's when he puts the Royal Guard back to sleep and he's all like, and it's kind of interesting because it's the first time in the book. Well, I want to say maybe not the only time, but it is one of the few times that we see the medallion used for something other than, like, a healing purpose besides the time that she attacks the dragon, which I don't even know if that's a functional part. I think that's more of like that was more of the sacrificial thing that was supposed to happen to, like part of the play, let's say. I don't know. That's a good question. Because she had to destroy the staff to get the medallion. Now she has the medallion. It's more part of her. It's more like a closer to the god kind of thing at this point. She doesn't necessarily have to use the staff. She can, now she is like a true cleric. She can say a word, a prayer in real-time sense and heal.
That's like D&D. She was using just a magical staff that was blessed by the god, but now she has an actual emblem of the god, and she's a cleric.
Now she's got that good faith.
Yeah.
His name is Gary, and he lost his shell. Damn. There's a snail.
All right, Gary. Well, he didn't die. I think he just kind of got hurt a bit.
Yeah, he didn't die. Honestly, the way it reads, I thought they were going to re-encounter him because, I mean, the way he backtracks, he kind of goes their direction because they wait before they move on. They camp again. That's when he does the whole like bitching out Lorana thing, which I thought somebody was going to bring that up, but I really don't like that scene where he like, we found out that it's the pursuer, and it's like, and I agree with Tanis. It's such a foolhardy thing. But she brings like some of the most obvious things that he should have known to light, like right off the bat. Like, we were trained in war just like um, I really didn't like that part, and it's kind of why I did like that we glossed over it, but still, I think it needs to be said. But it's not one of the, as far as the leader goes, and honestly, I like it both ways. It does show good leadership because we do see a progression through the book that he regrets doing that. It's not a highlighted point like, oh yeah, I told her off and I'm sticking to it.
No regrets.
But I will say, as a writing situation, it's such a great, kind of situation. It is like wonky in one sense. Why would she, I mean, besides her just being enthralled in love, why would she do this? Maybe she's bored kind of thing. Because in one sense, you get the whole, like, they're supposed to be moving the whole elf community, like, now. Like, and she just abandons her dad to go do this kind of thing. I don't know. Anybody want to say anything before I move on to the next one?
We find out gold is worthless.
Oh, not yet. Oh, we're getting there. We're getting there. That's in the tread.
No, I was just gonna say, you fixing to move on to the next chapter, or?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't want to spoil. No, I was going to point something out that I felt humorous in this chapter, but I didn't want to spoil anything. But because it's in this chapter, and that is
which chapter? 10 or 11?
The one we're on, the one we just talked about. 11. Was it 11?
We're on 10.
10. Pardon me. One of the most used one of the most used D&D memes and videos that you see. You kind of see a little bit here in this chapter where Raceland used a spell from the Book of Fist and Danless to open a door, and then they come up to another door, and he's like, I can't use that spell again because it's from my memory. And then all of a sudden you hear Fizban go, hey, I think I remember the fireball spell. And they're like, no, you'll fry every one of us in this narrow corridor. Like, when in doubt, use fireball.
That was you are true. I did pick that up. Like, it's kind of some of the things I appreciate about the book, like the whole magic depletion thing, because honestly, in a written sense, that's new for me. You play the game and it comes off in a different way. You have stat points and stuff like that. So it's not something that you're kind of like, because again, Raised is sick, he's injured. So this isn't an ordinary way that a cleric, they do have depletion levels, but it wouldn't look this way. So the way it reacts with race, I kind of love it. It's like the way he did use the spell, and he was like, whoa, I was amazed that I was able to use that spell, but at the same time, like, I didn't realize it was going to drain like 75% of my magical power kind of thing. Like, I kind of appreciated that kind of stuff, because for him, in context, it was like a next level up spell book, and I like that this world kind of like has stat levels like this accordingly kind of thing.
It's one of those things he used like a way higher spell than what was needed, and it drained him. He overthought what it would take.
Well, another aspect that also cuts off that whole like complaint about a Deus Ex Machina, because in this world, when you're playing with magic and fantasy, anything can be a possibility, right? So you have to have some level of like, what can these people do? How far can they go? What is a great human cleric versus a dragon's, level of magic, kind of thing. So I can appreciate that all this was kept in mind on a written level, for the reader to take an effect, because it's something you can brush over very easily in this book, kind of thing. It's something that if you're not paying attention, that like the breaks they're having to take, or like the times that Race does, cast a spell, they do mention, like it either like injures him or he has to go rest, or, something like that. But they're usually like one sentence right after. So, I mean, if you're speed reading, it could be something that can be easily looked over, kind of thing. All right,
about their encounter with that dark elf spirit is it actually in the author's note it describes it as actually being a banshee, and as being an elfin banshee, nonetheless it's a peculiar phenomenon. Like there's not too many of them out there, but they don't actually describe it being a banshee, even though they don't say it outright, from what I remember and from what I'm seeing. But
no, I don't think they do, and I'm glad for the clarification. I do like that it was like the ghost of a dark elf, but the fact that it's like a banshee kind of makes a little more sense, because that was her first go-to, was like, the power of scream, and it was going to like encompass them and kind of paralyze them, kind of thing. I did want to touch base on them. Like, we're seeing like a different version of elves, like compared to like Hobbiton World or various other fantastical elves, because I don't know too many elves that would like have this burial ground and entune like enslave like one of their like because in this version of dark elves, they're bad. It's not like in Lords of the Rings the term dark elf isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just they didn't choose to go this way, so they were deemed dark. No, in D&D, dark is like a term of evil kind of thing. So it's kind of unique to find this like the ghost of this dark elf, and she's like magically entombed down here with these other like other spiritual figures and stuff, but she's trapped there having to do that, part of her penance or whatever you call it. I thought it's very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, it kind of paints a picture of the elves in general. I mean, it's just a lot different. Because in general speaking, elves are usually pro-life, not like, we're gonna, or I wouldn't even say pro-life, but they're pro everything for the living. They're kind of anti against the dead kind of thing. So it's kind of unique to see that they were using this, but I mean, it's still kind of a trap. I mean, it's a bad thing.
It's nice to know that like we'll call him a level 1 Raceland has enough power to lock out a banshee, so
that just paints the picture of him being more badass. Like that, there was never a doubt in this book that he was one of my favorite characters. I mean, from the description and trying to grasp what he'd look like moving forward, like it just gets better as the book goes, because I mean, there was never a moment where Race is like the dumbass wizard, or he's painted as like he's battle hardened, he's ready to go. I mean, of course he does get bamboozled from here to there, snuck up on kind of thing, but other than that, I mean, he's wearing a cloak that's like this, so his peripherals can't be all that good, so you're gonna get darted every now and then, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He does overestimate himself, though. Yeah. That's one thing.
Okay, well, I mean, isn't that the story of all people that venture out and seek power as their main, yeah. All right, well, let's move along. But there's so much of this I like. The slug, the dark elf, like this right here just felt like a traditional D&D campaign. Like I can envision just us 5 sitting around the table, and Beckermin is like, "All right, y'all are coming into the room," and he's DMing, and man, yeah, I mean, it's just set up to read like that kind of thing. It's so nice. And it goes back into we were talking the last episode about this feels like this whole book was written as it was like they were playing a campaign and they just wrote the book as they were going, kind of thing.
Which is kind of what they did.
I like it, and it works, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so chapter 11, Lost, the Plan, Betrayal. betrayed. Fizban and Taz climb up the giant chain as the Dark Elf appears. We find out that during this whole debacle, like Fizban kind of grabbed Taz, and they kind of went in one direction when the group kind of went in another direction, and Fizz and Taz end up going up these massive chains. To highlight something else, this was something that Taz already wanted to do. He already wanted to climb the chains to see what was up there. So it's kind of like he was just being guided the way he wanted to go, kind of thing. So they continue to climb and come to a huge room. We flip to the main group, and it's going to go back and forth. We're going to either flip between the main group, which is it's a majority of like the 7 people are there, or it's back with Fizz and Taz. So we flip back to the main group. They discuss the plan. They are to make it to the women, dress as them, get to the children, flee into the mountains. Suspects go back and forth. We flip back to Tass and Fizban, who find a secret door into Verminard's chamber with a balcony 3 floors above where Ember, the dragon, is. And I forget which ones they're known by, but I have both names written down. Pyro and Ember, and I think they know him by Ember, and his real name is Pyro. I think that's how it goes. We jump to Ember's perspective, and we find the Queen of Darkness is looking for a green emerald man, the Ever Man. Pyro is interrogating prisoners, trying to find this Ever Man. Viewmaster Torda brings two prisoners, one Setston, the Gully Dwarf, and the other a deaf-mute spy. Verminard looking and connecting to Goldmoon. During, I don't know why I wrote this, but basically there's like a moment where Verminard is concentrating on finding Goldmoon, and they are, because they're both represented by the gods, now they're kind of connected wise, like spiritual. Okay, the spy is sent to the mine. Setson is to be fed to the dragon. Pyro is told the betrayer has been successful and demands to see him. It's basically where this chapter leaves off. There's a whole bunch that happens there. Let's hold on. Yeah.
Can you hold it up?
I mean,
Yeah, we couldn't see the name. There we go.
Ember and the Red Dragon.
Also known as Pyros.
Yeah, so should we be calling him Ember or Pyros? Is Pyros only if you're another dragon? Like, we've never been explained this. This is kind of why I threw my name up. Beckermin is my dragon name. Like,
How to train a Beckermin, huh?
Yeah.
I think that's just right, Beckermin. They had their names, but the people called them something.
Yeah, because they're
not particularly hard to say names.
No, they're not. They really communicated with people that were calling them that. You know what I'm saying? It's just people kind of through the grapevine. Oh, that's who that is, and it just kind of built that way.
I want to say there is a loose explanation the first time they run into Onyx or whatever, and it's like no, it's with this one, because it's when they're trying to explain that they can go to dragon and human form. They explain it in the same kind of sentence. And it's basically like they have like a secret name, a dragon name, and they keep that to themselves, and only the other dragons and like the queen and the dragon lord knows that. But then like all the humans know them by this like spy name. And I don't one of the things, because this whole thing with like this is the part of the book where we find out that, because at this point the dragons are specifically working for Lord Verminard, and we find out, and he's working for the Queen of Darkness. So at this point we find out that the chain of command is a little muddled, and we find out some of the dragons are specifically just working for the Queen of Darkness and not going through Lord Verminard, even though Pyro is playing the whole "I'm working for Lord Verminard." Even
I'm a loyal employee, but I don't actually work for you.
Yeah, even to the point where it's like where some of the minions know the game the dragon is playing, like some of the draconians that come in, they're like, hey, yes, we must go tell Lord Vermin. I forgot, No, I kind of like all that, but it is a little confusing in the beginning, like why the need, like why she isn't telling Lord Verminard. I don't know, like how that isn't like very
he's
important.
her big muckety muck priest, right? And she's not cutting him in on her plans.
Hey, I don't get that part, and it's not explained in this book. I'm hoping maybe in the second part, because there is supposed to be a plan. Like there, then they do mention that the Dark Queen has this plan, and the destruction of her plan is the Everman. That's when he comes into play, this green emerald man. I think it's ironic that, because the book plays that, I don't know if y'all picked it up, but the whole with Beep, what's her name? The Gully Dwarf? Is it Beepoo?
Boopoo?
Boopoo.
What was the stone that she was given to race?
It was just an emerald.
Yeah, just an emerald. And then a couple chapters later, we get this whole this dragon looking for an emerald man.
It's interesting you draw a line between those two things.
I'm just saying,
I have a couple author's notes on dragons from this chapter. The dragons of the typical AD&D world are solitary creatures dedicated to preserving and augmenting their hoard of treasure. Never would they become involved in the affairs of men as they do on Krynn. In some ways, they are the same. However, even small dragons have enormous egos and despise anyone who lacks willpower and confidence. And on the flip of that, several of the various kinds of dragons can shape change, which I think we saw a little bit of. Though there's always some small thing about the dragon that's dragonish, or about the person when they're in their shape-shifted form.
It's telling.
That's a telling.
Yeah, that's cool. Like if they turn into cat, they would still, maybe their tail would still have like a little, the fur would have ridges on it. That's kind of cool. I like that. It's good. And we do see some of the shape shifting here, but here it's just dragon to human. But their level of magic just kind of entails that they could possibly turn into other things, which is immensely scary. Like to have a dragon that can shapeshift. Like, just the fact that you have a dragon that can use magic on the level of like dark magicians and shit, that's scary. Now I will say that they're not the greatest magicians, and we've seen like up until this point the book has demonstrated like twice that the dragons aren't really the greatest of magicians, because the one dragon was like, I'm gonna kill you, and then like blinded itself and was like, damn, I can't see. Like, I know they're down there. I'm just going to blow some fire down there, Yeah, so they're not, even though they have the ability, they might not be the most intelligent with it, kind of thing. Which is another thing, because dragons are supposed to be, like, immensely intelligent.
It depends. That one was pretty stupid, remember?
Yeah.
Yeah. He had like
stats. It wasn't smart.
Yeah. And we do it, and to highlight some cool things. We do get different versions of dragons, because we get the kind of the low level intelligent, we get the more cunning, smarter, and then we get the kind of feeble minded elder, kind of thing. So it's really cool to get like a good range of what could be out there, kind of thing.
It does get reinforced to us that Verminard isn't highly regarded. Like twice now we've seen the dragons, Onyx and Ember both were just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to do what I want, and Verminard's just going to need to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, what's he really going to do? Yeah, he's my boss, but
so
like they don't really respect him.
I want to say I know where this stems from, because this is like the one book that I can think of where I've ever come across this, where like the main bad guy hasn't made his presence known until like the end of the book, and like he hasn't really been like even a mention until the end of the book, kind of thing. Because the one part we found him in was when they burned Gold Moon's town, and there was like just the mention of his name or whatever.
Well, that was Verminard.
No, that's what I'm saying. We haven't really got a whole lot of him in the book, kind of thing, and it just reminds
he's a little disappointing, kind of a buffoon too.
It reminds me of like all 80s RPG games, like Final Fantasy. You don't find out who the last boss is until like a couple chapters. Like
I don't want
Dragon
to
Warrior.
jump ahead, but I mean, just hey, boss, you want us to put your saddle on? Nah, I won't. Need that.
Yeah. He kind of always reminded me of like the Glass Joe of Dragonlance.
Okay,
honestly,
well that's
he kind of reminds me of. Let's just stay on Verminard.
we'll get there. We'll get there.
Can we stay on him for 1 second?
We can. We can. We haven't even got to him, but we can.
But he's kind of like I see a bit of myself in him. In that I would be the guy that figures out when he's in a fight that I did not plan this helmet well.
I love that part. I freaking love that part that they break all character and we go into his head and we get some of his real thoughts. Okay, we're bright.
I jumped. I'm sorry.
See, look at you. See, we haven't even got to Verminar. We're getting there. Okay, what's up, Berdazzle? Thanks for stopping by. And I will say, like, no, we're still there because the book has two shifts. Really, it's like we're in quest mode, and then we get to a certain part of the book, and we're not in quest mode anymore. We're at like final battle mode kind of thing. And during the Slummoria, we're still in like quest mode, but we're almost like out of the quest mode. It's kind of like right after they get out of the quest mode, and then it's like just balls to the wall, like the in-game stuff. Okay, so 12. The Parable of the Gem, Traitor Revealed, Tass's Dilemma. Main group makes it to the women's cells, explains plan, and disguises themselves as women. They meet Marta and learn the problem with the men are the high speakers. And they also learn of Flame Strike, an elder, deluded dragon guarding the kids. Tannis apologizes to Lorana. Race, being too sick, stays behind, and the group head to the men. Fizban and Tass make it to the balcony. In that room, before Fizz finds a painting that shows to Tass and explains how they fought the dragons before in the past, that there were good dragons and the dragonlance, forgotten instantly but meant to remember later at a different time. The main group makes it to the men, Hendrik being the biggest problem of the high speakers. They meet Elistan, dying. He's the only high speaker to go against Verminard during this whole thing. She explains how to find the gods and what happened, how they lost them. Gilth and Eben disappear during this. Sestin is taken to Pyro. Eben, revered to be a traitor, explains the group's plans. Eben is told to find the Evermen. Tass and Fizban hear all of this, and they plan to save Sestin at the end of the chapter. Again, there is a lot in every single one of these chapters, and they read really, really quick. But I mean, we got a lot going down. There's a big part of the group where they go off and they do the whole getting into woman thing, which we're going back into the whole Stern and what he will and won't do, and then we get a little bit of that out of Riverwind, and I won't dress like a woman, even though it was the plan before they got there. Like nobody spoke bad about it until they got there, and then they were like, "Oh, I don't like this. We're gonna dress as women."
Yeah, once again, it reminds me of the worst of people trying to argue for their characters. Like, can we just do the plan? Damn it! We came up with a plan. We have a plan. Do you have to pull your crap now?
There's always that one guy.
Yeah,
I will say I kept waiting for Tannis to just yell out and be like, we're like a room away from 3 dragons, right? There's one like that way, and I mean, or 2 dragons, but still like the Dragon Lord. But I mean, like, I kept waiting for him to like do the slappy slap moment and be like, can we get on playbook? Like, because even during this beat, there's a lot of times when they move, they stop because of this, they move, they stop because of that, and it's always like it's Stern or a lot of it is the whole betrayal thing. Them go, oh, well, where did they go? And oh my God, they're missing again. And
so does anybody Hedrick? I just want to jump in here, Mike. Sorry, Hedrick.
No, we're on the same wavelength. It's the same wavelength.
I've come
That's where I was
into
going.
a realization on this read through, which this was a few weeks ago now, over a month probably. Back in October, I want to say we started this. And when I read it, I realized in my head that over the years, I understand Hedrick better now. And I kind of read his lines in my head as a televangelist from TV. Like early morning televangelist. Like, look what this barbarian woman did to my hands.
Yep.
She tried to cure me with her sin. And I had to put them in the fire to undo what she did. Like, really?
I like that he's the first one that ran up there for his prize, and he was the first one to be sent to the mines. And in the mines, he's still like, yeah, Verminard's gonna, he's gonna make do. I mean, even though he's forcing us to work like 18-hour days, and I mean, I find it like I do like. There are some parts where I can get a line Hendrix thinking, but there's a lot of times where I'm like, how can you hold on to this? You're being forced to work in these mines. All these other dudes are complaining because their families have been taken, their lands have been burned, and you're still over here trying to campaign in the back of this cell. Like, hey, Verminard, he's gonna set us free and he's gonna give us all this land. And I mean, what is he selling? I mean, because you made the point earlier.
Exactly. Like,
we haven't gotten there, but gold's not even valuable. So I mean, what is he selling?
Who's still sending him money in envelopes at this point?
I want to know in the cell who was like, I mean, because you can't have an evangelist in a cell like that, and it being this angsty with kidnaps and lands destroyed without the angst, right? So who is backing this guy and protecting him from these, because there's emotions involved in these things, and you can't tell me a whole bunch of innocent farmers are just sitting there listening to Hendrick be like, yeah, I mean, I understand we're in here in the cells, and I understand.
Let me tell you about the new gods.
He's like, but everything is gonna be all right. I'm telling you, Lord Verminard. I mean, I've spoken to him, and maybe I'm confusing things, but I know he's got our back.
So it's go ahead. I was
by the end of this chapter. I'm sorry.
Oh no! All I was gonna say, it's like he's sitting in the back of the cells, going, "Yeah, he's gonna kill some of us, but it's for our own good,
That got me good. Yeah, he's gonna kill some of us.
Some of you will die in labor.
That guy right back there that keeps giving me the evil eye. You going first, buddy.
But no, by the end of this chapter, we realize they kind of hit the motif that everybody's kind of sick of this guy's shit at this point. But I mean, there are people like, well, okay, I don't like him, but he's got a point. But by the end of this, as soon as one of these evangelists gets lifted up and gets that good religion, right? Alistan, he gets the healing and he becomes a convert. He's kind of, I mean, not to go into Christianity, but he's kind of the Paul of this group. Yeah. And he gets the good, and immediately every other seeker hates him.
Hold on, because you just touched on something, and we can't bruise over that. All right. So we just brought this up. Right? Steve's bringing up. We will compare that to some Jesus. And all right, so we're talking about Alistan, right? And what does every church need, right? Especially if it's a miracle or faith-based church, what do they need? They need that one dude in the audience that comes up and is like, "Oh, I was healed." They need the proof, right? So we got the situation right here with Alistan, and he's all like, "Oh, you mentioned the old gods, girl," and she, and he's dying, and she comes up and she's like, "Oh, abracadabra," and she heals him, but technically, she doesn't really heal him. She just heals him a little bit enough where he can talk a little bit better, and he's all like, "Well, that's the blessing of the god,"
Well, no, because he said, I mean, we're kind of led to believe he has cancer, right?
I want to say we're just kind of led to believe he's at the end of his
well,
thread kind of thing.
Hold on.
Like
the lady of the camp, the head gal. She says, "Oh, my father had this. This is the Black Death or whatever. This is the he's gonna die."
Yeah, it is. It is some kind of rare infliction, something like that.
We think it. I don't know. When I read that, I read it as he's probably
like cancer,
like cancer or something. And when he gets the parable from Gold Moon, he's like, of course, the gemstone's out there. It's waiting for the person who lost it, not the other way around. It wasn't the one that was misplaced, right? It's not the one that did the misplacing. So we have to come back to the gods, not the other way around. And he says, man, I wish I wasn't dying. I wish I had more time to learn about these gods. And she doesn't promise to heal him. She says, I promise you more time. And this is honestly, we're probably, if you've read your Bible, this is probably the closest we'll get to a Jesus healing, right? It's not like I'm not going to make you live forever, but here, I'm going to give you more time to learn about this.
Yeah. I had this whole scene. I love the whole explanation that she gives about, that they didn't exactly, the gods didn't leave them, or they didn't lose the gods. That it was more like, the whole gemstone that they dropped it during the woods accidentally, and they just, even though trying to find it, they still couldn't. It was just that, needle in a haystack, hidden kind of thing, and. I do like that whole explanation, and on a written level, it makes a lot of comparable sense, especially in the world that they build up from the beginning. It's kind of nice getting to a point in this book, and there is an explanation this early on in a trilogy set of story where they're filling in some of the loose gaps. I wouldn't say this is like a factoid, but still getting some of some of this explanation on because we've known
you're getting
this
the
point.
Frame of it, the dark elf in the chapter before we learned, Raistlin has a connection to dark elves. That's what his test was, or it played a part of his test. We're getting little pieces filled in behind us.
Because really, you think about it, this is something that they could have spanned out a lot longer, especially, how many books comparatively they wrote after this, and which, granted, they probably had a million other ideas, which they did, so, but, in different writers' hands, that some of the stuff could have been spanned out long. So, like you said, getting the frame of this early on is quite nice. But let's move along. All right, so we got chapter 13, questions, no answers, Fizban's hat. Main group makes it back to the women's cells. Eben and Gilth back and with explanations. Tika protects Eben. Lorana protects Gilth. Raist is brought under suspicion as well. Tanis, knowing they have been betrayed but not knowing who, continues on with the plan. Fizban and Tass wake up, accidentally falling asleep. They magically rescue Sexton. Verminard enters directly after, mad that the group is in the fortress, but is distracted by Fizban's hat floating down above him. We flip back to the main group. Women are better explained the plan. Lorana and Tika to protect the women. They head to the kids, coming to a massive chamber housing Flamestrike, flipping back to Taz. Fizban and Sexton. It's a mad flea backtracking to the chain, being chased by Pyro at this point in dragon form. Pyro destroys that part of the fortress, climbing back down the chain. Pyro melts it, and the chain falls with them on it, and that's where the chapter ends. Again, this is pretty much, we're out of quest mode, and this is like roller coaster in-game stuff. I love how this all is. I'm not necessarily a fan of the flipping back and forth. I can appreciate it because it was it had to happen. I wish I would have preferred that we did this whole thing as one group, but the way they do flip back and forth, I do like it. But in both scenarios, it's like a shit show kind of thing. I mean, it just gets kind of worse before it gets better, kind of thing. But the
Can you
whole
go back
like
to the beginning of your notes.
main group makes it back to the women's cells.
Keep going.
Eben and Gilth back and with explanations.
Okay, here's what I want to talk about. As a reader, this has always been a part I've struggled with because I know they do their best, but it is clear from the beginning that the new guy was the betrayer. And the older I get, the more obvious it becomes. Like, as a kid, I was kind of like, okay, kind of predictable, but I guess they did their best to make me wonder about the other two. Now it's honestly, just like, who would ever... Come on, it's obviously him.
Honestly, this was my first, as being the new reader in the group, this was my first complaint about the book on how obvious this was. Like, and I mentioned this to Trev, like to the point where like the whole Gilth and Eben thing made it that more apparent about Eben's whole like situation. And like, I mean, I will say it's hard to like lay down these seeds if you're not going to outright tell the reader that this guy's betrayed, especially when you have the scene like the whole Eben going to Pyro and we find out that way. But even like the first time you meet Eben, honestly, just his whole situation, like it just comes off at a time that's odd, and as a reader, that's the way. If something comes off at odd, that's usually your first lean to is, oh, this guy's a traitor, he's a liar, he's there for some sinister reason. You know, you might not know why, but I mean, in the book tells you that's kind of the main blow that gets me is when they were going through that situation, Gilthanus mentions twice that he did not know the route there, and none of the other elves do. It was that secret. And then like they find Eben there, and then Eben mentions it. Oh, I thought this was supposed to be a secret path, and it's like, well, how did you find it then? You know, and it just leads you to it leads you to like, well, yep, this guy's a bad guy. He's being told by
it never a doubt in my mind. And even as a kid, I was like, oh, he's proud. So this guy is a betrayer. Like, he's a spy.
Okay, now I want to say as a reader, I kept wanting the writer to like do the whole, and I'm not a fan of this trope, but I wanted them to do the whole redemption like trope where he was a betrayer, he was bad, and at the end, like for some odd reason, he was going to turn the tide and go good. For some reason, I felt like that was coming. I don't know like what led me to that, but I kept getting the hint of that, even when like specifically during, and I'm jumping ahead, but specifically the conversation between him and Everman. Like I kind of got the feeling that like magically he was going to be turned or something, and that
I'm just even more frustrated by it because we do get a trope here, a trope for these books, and especially this one. This one has it the worst. They'll spend chapters building up a character, then just be like, well, anyway, he got crushed by a ton of bricks of irony. Like, come on. Like, he's very smart. He's handsome. He does he's the James Bond of Krynn. Oh,
and he dies.
He walked under a
Never mind. We were wrong.
Stone.
He wasn't the James Bond of
Krynn. Kind of the same way. Like, here's the first cleric in Krynn.
Verminard is. Yeah, Verminard is.
He's the Gaston. Nobody fights like Verminard. Nobody, like... But then
did he have a superhero landing to begin with?
Yeah.
He does, yeah.
And then, he pwns everybody at least once. It wasn't until...
And then goes out like a doofus.
Okay, so...
Dude, he's fighting an entire party. You got to.
Okay, so before getting there, what's Verminard's coolest moment for you in the book? Anybody can answer. I have my answer, and it's really only like one moment.
I like his
He takes out everybody in succession during their fight.
Yeah.
I like his self-realization of like, he's like, you know what? This midlife crisis of a helmet I'm wearing, like, it wasn't very functional. God damn, does it look cool, but I can't see shit.
I like the whole like I have dragons and draconians and it's hard to climb up this inn. So please, dragon, can you snatch that inn down and put it on the ground? And that's actually the first command we see from Verminard is that that he demands that the inn is taken down out of the tree or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's just kind of a doofus.
Okay,
Like,
and the next command we see like in the town that's burned, we see the message that Verminard leaves behind, not for the group, but he leaves it behind for his own minions, and it's like, if you do this again, I'll kill you. And
happens if you grant mercy. Sir, do you want to? I'll get your sail ready. I don't need that, you dummies.
Verminard
okay.
here.
Buckle
All
up.
right.
It saves lives, folks.
And we have a lot of tropes in this book. Okay, we had like I could say the fantasy. We met a lot of like Greek mythical, fantical. We met like top level fantical creatures in the first book. Like we met a freaking unicorn right off the bat that happens to be like the forest master. It's not just a unicorn. It's a special damn unicorn.
Yeah,
it's
won't
the
just feed you
unicorn.
dinner. It'll feed you its friends for dinner.
Oh.
I like how Tasselhoff came this close to breaking the fourth wall in this chapter. He was like, I have a lot to learn about dragons, apparently. I wonder if there's any good books on the subject. It was like, if only they would have just described him saying, like, looking at a wall or at, the camera. But it's just kind of funny how
I was waiting. I was waiting for him to look over on the next to the paintings and there being a bookshelf of other TSR books of that time, Forgotten Realms, and there's the Encyclopedia of Dragons second, edition or whatever.
The Draconomicon.
Right. And then magically he forgets all that, just like the painting or whatever. Hey, by the way, if you wanted to buy other TSR books, they're out there. All right, so we're going to move on. Chapter 14, Metafleur, the magic sword, white feathers. Main group is crossing the massive chamber and wakes Flamestrike, but she is fooled. They start to move the kids and Tanis gets too close and Wormslayer activates, causing a sound that hurts Flamestrike. For comparison, what's up, JSS Brooklyn? Thanks for stopping by. This sound that animates, it's more like a vibration with a sound that happens. This is like the second time we've seen it in the book. We saw it when Onyx died or whatever. It was the sound that caused I forget the place, but it caused that dungeon to crumble upon them. So now we have a sword. It's this enchanted sword that he picked up, and as he's getting closer to the dragon, it is like magically activating or whatever, and him not realizing that this is a like specific dragon related sword. So it activates, causing a sound that hurts Flamestrike, enraging her. Tanis, using the Wormslayer, keeps Flamestrike back while everybody flees. Raced, he casts darkness, but both are able to escape away from Metafleur. Main group makes it outside and also sees Ember Pyro destroying another side of the fortress. Tass, Setson, and Fizz fall. And this is where we jump back with them from the last chapter. Fizzban falls to his death before saving the other two. They're saved by a ton of feathers. The main group in the center, and Tana's plan is falling apart. Eben gone goes to the mines. He finds Biram, the Everman, and he flees. Verminard with Nightbringer, a mace, heads to kill the traitors, dismisses his dragon saddle, which Beckermin, one of your favorite parts, jumps on Pyro, and they fly, with the men and women busy trying to reunite. Pyro and Verminard appear. The group confronts Eben and Biram. They protects him, revealing the gemstone in his chest. While fleeing, it appears Biram and Eben are killing. Biram and Eben are killed by the falling gates. Flamestrike appears and attacks Pyro. Believes he is attacking her children. Verminard. Huh?
I don't want you to glance over this.
Oh, I was going to say, we can always go back over it. Go ahead.
This speech is the second buffoonery of Verminard. Imagine, if you will, if he just ends the speech at women. We're going to kill the men. We're going to kill the women. And then says nothing else. Flamestrike doesn't come after them.
That is true. I mean, this whole scenario.
He's not going to spare the kids, though.
I'm just saying, he's made 2 decisions that really negatively impact his life. 1, sir, do you want a saddle? Yes, you should have said yes. Take the safety features, Verminard. And 2, you know what? We're going to kill all the men. We're going to kill all the women. And these kids, let's get them some food.
Yeah.
Get him back to that dragon. You know, he really loved.
Would you mind taking them to safety?
Right? She didn't have nothing to do.
All of a sudden, this is a much different fight.
Yeah. You got 2 dragons to deal with.
So Flamestrike appears and attacks Pyro, believes he is attacking her children. Verminard falls, not having the saddle. People flee into the mountains with Gilth and Lorenus now battle ready. And that's where that chapter ends, basically. Yeah, and there's a lot to gloss over right there. Let's rewind a little bit and talk about this scene with Verminard, because it is a fantastic scene, even though there is some kind of like really amazingly dumb stuff that happens. I mean, okay, granted, situation-wise, all this is spur of the second kind of thing. So the whole Verminard jumping on the dragon without a saddle, like, it is loosely explained why he would do this in the book, but it still is like an incredible. Yeah, I know, but I agree. It is still incredibly stupid, and we find out it. I mean, it does lead to part of his downfall, kind of thing.
Yeah, but how is he going to know that he's going to fight another dragon? You know what I mean?
Trev,
like, he was going to pop up
his
there
card
and just. I couldn't find it. I don't think he's in the set, actually.
Damn it.
He wasn't there long enough to have a character card.
Flint isn't in the set either. It's weird.
Ooh, Flint's not in the set? What the heck?
Yeah, one of the main characters.
No, I mean, it's ironic because we got a lot of information in this one scene, because we get like Barham's name, which is like the name of Everman or whatever. We get the whole, like, we get the name of Nightbringer, which is, you know, Verminard's specific mace. Like, they go into detail about this guy so much right before he basically dies, kind of thing. It's like, why didn't we get any of this before? There could have been a cool scene where like Verminard kills somebody with Nightbringer, and Gabe, like, maybe it had some like darkness power when he swung it, or some reason why it was called Nightbringer.
I have a question for everybody.
It did. He cast what did he cast? Darkness whenever he swung it. That was the spell attached to the weapon.
Okay. I thought he was just like casting spells.
A free cast, basically. That's why it was instantaneous.
Yeah.
Because he cast multiple spells.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Beck.
I have a question for everybody. Is Verminard Michael Scott? And what I mean by this is he the idiot regional manager of Takhiss's empire? Like, because we've now laid the grounds. His own draconian captain is like, we needed more troops here. Like, you sent everybody away. We're only 40 left at this fort. We've got a feeble old dragon, and we've got Ember, who kind of has his own agenda. Like, what are you doing to me, Verminard? Like, you're making it very hard to hold this camp down. He's clearly made cost-cutting decisions that he didn't need to make. Like, remember the line when you first meet Flamestrike, and they're like, one of the most evil things Verminard did was press this poor old dragon into service. Like, she should have been put out to pasture. She should.
I don't know where they found her.
And I have to think it's because it allowed him to bring his project in under budget, right? He's trying to impress his superiors at corporate, and he's like, look at all the money I'm saving on Draconians in watching over the children. We don't need to have that. Okay, I'm working on minimum budget here. I'm thinking outside the box. I'm
minimal budget.
I'm really making moves. He's Michael Scott. He's an idiot manager.
I will agree that he is Michael Scott in so many different ways, like, because I mean, he's so firm, like, especially in this situation. I mean, he's gung-ho. He knows he's won the situation when clearly he's lost, like, an outmatched, like, and he still continues to press forward, and he's like, yeah, you know. Even to the point when he's taking off the helmet and he's like, man, this thing is blinding me. Maybe this helmet wasn't such a good idea, you know, like, and like,
time to get murdered.
Right. So my question leads into like a real question that I had written down, because at this point, yes, he is Michael. You know, so what does that say about the Queen of Darkness? That this is who you put in command to bring about your rise of power, you know? I mean, okay, at this point in the book, you know, granted, all the way up there were some moments where I was like, okay, I can get behind her level of like menace and destruction. You know, she just blew through a whole town using these dragons. You know, she's enslaving people, putting these dang gully dwarves to work, you know. Okay,
you don't
so
see it, do you?
Well, I was gonna say like the other parts that are there, like the whole wicker dragon thing. Like whose idea was that? Was that?
Oh, that's Verminard all over.
Oh, you
like,
sure?
That is sure? Clearly a Verminard decision. Okay, again, cost savings.
Yeah. I was gonna go there.
So
margins.
What's it say about Verminard that one, he's not let in on the Dark Queen's true plans. He doesn't know how important the Green Gemstone Man is. The
Didn't even know about the prophecy.
He's not respected by the dragons, who I would view as upper level managers themselves of the Dark Queen. They're just kind of tolerating this buffoon. When he's casting spells, the Dark Queen decides to turn her attention elsewhere and no longer grants him her favor. And let's think about the area he's been given to conquer and control. Small farming communities, Gateway, Haven. Haven's probably the biggest city he's been given as part of his territory. The barbarian villages.
I was actually going to comment on that. Like you talk about his failed. I was going to mention, like, you talk about his failed conquest. He's given this small amount of land, like you mentioned, right? And we know he did use the dragons to decimate the barbarians and like the farming town that's next to them. But like he couldn't even take out the elves, like, which are just in a bunch of trees. You couldn't. I mean, just burn it down. Like, I don't get the whole like why he was struggling with taking out the elves. Like, if he was just going to use the same fashion as he did with the other towns, just run through and burn them down.
And he's obsessed with getting in on the Solamnia campaign, because that has clearly been given to somebody else. And he's like, no, we need to steamroll this, and then we want to send my army this way because I need to go join up back with the other regional managers. Like, I think he's aware that his territory is probably not a choice assignment, and I think he might suspect he is a buffoon. You know what I mean? But his sales were really good back in the day, so corporate did promote him.
Okay, so let's go into the why. Go ahead, Tony.
No, I was just going to make a kind of like a different comparison, but it's probably pretty much the same thing. And it made me think of there's a movie by Kelsey Grammer called I believe it was called Down Periscope.
Hell yeah!
They come up with a thing where they're like, you know, okay, this dude's been up for promotion 2 or 3 times and we didn't give it to him, so we're gonna have to do something with him. Otherwise, he's gonna, you know, be like, well, Verminard needs a promotion. Otherwise, he's gonna end up joining the other team or something. You know, they're like, okay, we gotta do something with him, so we'll just give him the little Haven land. We'll make him happy, and we'll call him the leader, and you know,
give him Hugh Master Torta as a manager.
We'll make you think he's doing something, but you know, we're gonna leave the rest of it to the real.
Kind of like this work order. He asked for a wicker dragon. He's spending money on a wicker dragon.
It's kind of like a transitional.
Okay. The wicker dragon. I don't even think that he ordered that or that was commanded to be built. I think the Draconians were just bored, and that priest.
There is not a doubt in my mind.
Let's build a dragon.
That built.
No, I'm thinking. I think they built it out of boredom, and Verminar just came along and was like, "Yep, that's a dragon. Let's use it." And he thought it was a great idea, kind of thing.
He put a senile dragon in charge of children.
Yeah.
And it was clearly to save money.
I was gonna say, y'all sure he didn't just get the
Actually, I kind of find that as a stroke of genius, because you are talking about a mentally unstable dragon. She's not just elderly; she's kind of confused.
She's not just elderly; she's dangerously elderly.
But he does. Okay, so we do know that she is like attracted to children. So I kind of see that as like a stroke of genius. Okay, like the dumbness comes from like the want to use this dragon, like yeah, I just want this ultimate wild card within my horde, and like what's the reason of using her? Like you mentioned, they make the comment of like, man, I feel bad for her, like where did he find her, kind of thing.
Yeah, where did he dig her up?
Like what's the reasoning for? I mean, is it just substance? Is it just she's a dragon and power and that's it? Because beyond that, like,
I want to say he has a budget and he's trying to work under it. Like
I did, Phil.
I could request more dragons, but if I use the dragons nobody wants and use them in a way nobody else is going to see, it's going to show that I think outside the box. This guy 100% had that wicker dragon commission, Mike. And also, I believe that for Christmas, he got the Draconians a pizza party.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
I was just gonna say, I feel like he ordered the wicker dragon off Wish, but I mean,
Temu.
Thanks.
It looks like a Temu order. I can get behind the pizza party thing. Okay, so like another real question. What does that say about like that all? And this could be like the Deus Ex Machina or the part. But what happens to be like the part you send your buffoonery like general to like just keep him busy, as to say, right? So you send him off in this mission, and it just happens to have like the place where the gods get resurrected. It has like the plates. It's the beginning of the tale of Huma. The last people that defeated your buffoonery, stuff. Like, what does it say about all that? I mean, all these things lead back to the Queen of Darkness kind of thing for me.
If what Beckerman's saying is true, she would want somebody stupid in that position that's just doing her bidding, that's not really thinking about what she's doing.
I like that aspect, but what about like the guarding of like this important stuff? Because we do find out
he had two important religious sites to guard, and he did so very poorly.
Yeah, because go ahead.
Sometimes he allocated resources elsewhere.
All I was gonna say is that she sent him there, and if he gets whacked, no big loss.
I mean, they had no idea that a magical item was going to appear and everything. It was kind of out of the blue. Something that they weren't prepared for, I don't think.
I can say that because that is a part of it. Like, and I will say that goes back into the buffoonery of Verminar, because it becomes like he had an original agenda, and then the staff appears and he's like, that's his whole focus there, which is not a bad focus, right? It is something that he needs to get rid of, kind of thing. But I mean, he does basically like stop his whole campaign to do focus on this kind of thing, like to the point where he's like bringing all his armies back, and he's like, yep, I need them all here to find this staff.
Well, it's like, yeah, her kryptonite. He's got to find it.
I've never heard of it. Tuscaloosa. There is some more we can touch base on this. If I mean, before we move on, the whole premise of the gemstone thing becomes more and more. You can feel it's like. I mean, of course, y'all have read this, and I've the subsequent
reading it
sequels.
The first time. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Reading it the first time, you feel like it's big. It's bigger. That it's gonna be of some importance. Like,
that's exactly where I was going.
That's a little crazy.
It's kind of I mean, there are some big aspects of this book, but for the most part, it's a self-contained story until you get to some of these other things. Now, I will say the Tales of Huma and all that, you could grant that as like, foreshadowing of bigger stuff to come and stuff, but and it pertaining to previous stuff, but really the Burn, the Green, the Everstone, that's really like the first time you're getting a sense that this could be something bigger than what it is. It's not just going to be a self-contained mission kind of thing. It honestly, it's like, and not to compare, one thing to another, but it's honestly like that. It was the first time it started feeling like it was going to have like an Empire Strikes Back ending kind of thing, where they were setting up these seeds to fall off on this book to be picked up in another book kind of thing.
Knowing that the Queen wasn't, or was still a threat, that's obviously a propeller to know that there's going to be more content. But the Green Gem, man, definitely placed, it just solidified it more that there's going to be more depth than just fighting the Queen next necessarily. Or at least it created some nuggets of thought.
It did, and it's very nice how they did that. And I did brush over this, but we did have like, there is a massive fight between Verminard and this group. It's such a badass. It's actually a really badass battle, regardless of how like the buffoonery talk. I mean, he might be like not the greatest of like generals or whatever, but as far as like him being a badass like bad cleric, in battle, like he was pretty dope, minus his armor or whatever. But like, I mean, because he's able to take out our crew like well easily. Like, and if certain things wouldn't have happened, he probably would have killed like the main three right here, kind of thing.
Yeah, the main four.
Well,
So,
Go
I
ahead.
would like to know what his total resources were, because what we have left behind is. Did Viewmaster Torta get sent away? Was he even gone by that point? Did he leave with the army?
He's gone at this point.
Yeah, so he's gone. So that's probably all of his hobgoblins, all the frontline guys.
All his main army left.
Probably hundreds of Draconians, right? Maybe 1,000 men or more that have been corrupted.
In the book, it's one other dragon. It was a legion of Draconians, the hobgoblins.
40 Draconians are left at the fort.
Yeah, it's like a minimal crew.
That's dragon, one senile dragon, and Verminard.
But they did mention that there's another red dragon that went to go to Quellenasti to do that.
That got sent off.
And there's no, I double checked on the name of the other dragon. It's the one that they see on the cliff because I thought that was Flamestrike, but as far as the book pertains, Flamestrike stays inside the castle.
Go outside. They really mistreated that old woman.
Yeah, and so we don't ever get a name to the other dragon, so it's just a random dragon at this point.
In a wyvern gets sent out too. It's
funny. I was just looking at the author's note on that on the annotated version. It's surprising that the Draconian captain would happen to have a wyvern handy to carry the messages. These distant relatives of dragons are more eager to attack than to cooperate with anyone. They have long, thin bodies and curved, stinging tail, and none of the cunning of dragons. So a little tidbit.
Yeah, and I did know that about wyverns, and I do remember them mentioning the wyvern in this. I thought that was weird, especially because the Sworn is called like a wyvern hunter. Like they're usually not so intelligent kind of thing. They're more like lizardy. No, there was some cool. I mean, the whole also during the Verminard fight, that's when Gold Moon appears, and I'm gonna misplace her name, Mishkail. What's the good name of the god? Mishkail. That's when Mishkail appears to fight for Gold Moon, and as she appears, that's what like the Queen of Darkness, having Verminard's side, sees her, and she like instantly freaks out, and she's like, and she takes off and leaves Verminard by himself.
I've got other things to do.
he's still trying to do magic, and he's like, "What the f? Like my magic's not working." I did like that scene really well, like how it's set up, the whole like, especially the surprise, because the evil just thought she was just gonna come in there and be this big badass, and instantly it's there's not even a fight. She just sees the other guy and is like, "Nope, I'm out."
Yeah, she should have hired better.
Yeah.
Probably because Goldmoon was a true cleric, and Verminard, I don't know about.
He's a true cleric. It's been cited many times. He has access to not spells, but prayers, and he can call down power. He just used his resources poorly.
Maybe it goes to show that there's already a lot of good in Krynn. So it's, the queen has her hands full. She doesn't have a lot of resources that are reliable other than her dragons, which are still, dare I say, some are still in a slumber. The Draconians, which are of her own ilk.
I can go with that, and I can agree with it. The book tries to express that from the beginning of the book, talking about like when Tanis and Flint was coming into Krynn, and they were noticing the differences and the changes since that, without knowing the Draconians had been there already, kind of thing. So I want to say the book, in a general way, does express that, without specifically explaining it. But I can agree that. Because we do see it, we mentioned that before, that this isn't like, a whole bunch of like warrior towns that these people are, conquering.
No,
It's a bunch of like, like towns and farmholds. And so I want to say, it kind of plays into the men, once we get to that whole situation, because that whole first part of the battle scene is kind of exactly how I thought it was going to go down. I was like, how are they going to, like get all these people mass run over to these children and get them to come back over? And sure enough, when it goes down, it doesn't go down like that. Half of them go this way. I'm like, have you ever seen crowds? They never. I mean, you can tell them stuff. They don't all listen. That's if they're all paying attention, kind of thing.
I guess I'll reword it by saying Verminard didn't have the conviction of a true cleric.
I want to say, it felt like it. As far as a new reader and me reading what's portrayed of Verminard, battle-wise, he doesn't come off as the buffoon. The only bad mistake he makes is, just the armor he's wearing, and
he had ego.
Okay, so this goes into like
competition.
Yeah, exactly. This goes into like
he never went up against another cleric. It was never a concern. He was at one point, we were told he was like the only cleric, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
And he was also an early hire of Tachissus. Like he was the first cleric in 300 years. So yeah, he might not have been the best guy for the job, but he was the first one, and because of it, it probably made him really confident. And look at the areas, as we just said. Look at the areas he had to conquer. Probably the toughest fight he had was wiping out those barbarians, and he used a dragon to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And in Forso, he got mad that like their bodies got messed with by the hobgoblins. It seems like the hobgoblins were mad when they got there.
No, they spared them. They took prisoners. That was what they got killed for.
Was that? I thought they were like, I thought they got killed, and he got mad because they got.
He killed the goblins for taking prisoners without permission.
Oh yeah, he was reprimanding him. You're right.
And I know you're getting close to the battle here. If not, we're like at the threshold. But about Verminard, another fun note. He was. They don't get into this at all after this because a spoiler. We're not going to see a lot of Verminard after this. He was named after Vermin by his mother's husband, who was not his father. Though a descendant of Huma, he is seduced into evil by the voice of or Tachissus. After he is fully hers, she speaks to him through his mace, Nightbringer. This bitter story is told in Before the Mask. It's a spinoff.
Now that's interesting because that kind of explains how he approaches Sturm. And also it explains why he wants to get to Solamnia, right? That's a homecoming for him. If he's a descendant of Huma, he's Solamnic.
Yep, that explains a lot.
It's very interesting, yeah. especially with the Nightbringer thing, something that I mentioned earlier. Like I kind of felt like we should have got a little more of that, in this. But it's good to know that there is more out there, for a reader that was curious, which I am. It sounds interesting. So let's get there. So chapter 15, the Dragon High Lord, Metaflora's children. Verminard squares up with the four. Tanis raced. Caramon, Sturm, using the power of his Dark Queen, he easily bests the four. Raced and Caramon fall first, Tanis next, and Sturm last. Goldmoon, backed by Mishakol, comes forth and causes the Dark Queen to flee. Riverwind and Goldmoon fight Verminard. Now free of spells, Tanis and Sturm come. Tanis stabs him and Sturm decapitates him. Metaflora and Pyros kill each other during this occasion. Again, this is all sped up. This fight is epic. I've kind of mentioned this already. I was generally very, very pleased with this, especially being a Stephen King fan and him not being the best of like, in-game bad guy situations and stuff like that. What's up, Tina? Thanks for stopping by. No, this was a fantastic like in-game boss battle, because he is painted as a buffoon like a little bit before this, especially with the saddle part, because it's mentioned in like a fourth wall breaking thing that he shouldn't have done that kind of thing. So you get a whole lot of like, he shouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. Then to get him to go up against these four, and at this time in the book, they're all, I want to say comedy aside, they're all, presently presented as battle hardened adventurers kind of thing. So I knew there was going to be a battle, but for it to go down, and I mean just the way he walks up and he's like kadoosh, come by him, I mean it's kind of like one move things, and he just takes these people out. It's not even like a swashbuckling situation where it's a back and forth. No, it's a one hit, he's down, a one hit, that guy's down, a one hit, that guy's down, and moves to the last. Any comments?
I'm really curious to know what level he is, because everybody's like level 10 at this point. So he's got to be like 15, something like that.
I can agree with that.
Only comment I was going to make was when you made reference to Goldmoon making Takesis go away. She really wasn't the only thing that made Takesis flee. So somebody else showed up that made her flee, or at least distracted her.
Well, Barham, of course, because he is in that whole situation. And he died, like, presently at this point in the book, supposedly he's dead. I mean, spoiler alert, he's not dead.
Well, he shows up at the wedding.
Well, it's also kind of the book paints it like it could be him, it could not. It's one of those situations like, yeah, but we could be looking at a ghost. I'm pretty sure we're not, kind of thing. But the book kind of paints it like that.
I mean, I was always 100% convinced it was him.
Me too. That's what I'm saying. That's the way the book reads. It's not really a doubt that he didn't perish in that situation. But the book does try to, like, because Tanis looks over there and sees him, and then he looks back and he's gone. One of those situations.
Tony makes a good point though about, we have multiple cases in this book of divine intervention. My next question for everybody is, and this is kind of backtracking, because we did talk about Fizban and Taz's side quest and Fizban turning to feathers and everything. It's clear that he's not just a bumbling wizard. It's clear that he at times has protected, at least in that scenario, he protected Tasselhoff from Dragonflame, not once, but twice, and Ceston by association. Is anybody... Did anybody find that slapsticky OP DM stuff, like, did anybody not like it? Because as I get older, I don't care for Fizban anymore. As a kid, I liked him. as an adult. Like as a kid, I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. Like he's kind of this conjuring old, he's Mr. Magoo basically with god level powers. But as an adult, I'm like, this is stupid. Nobody suspects this guy for being more.
So as the new reader, and I talked backstage with Trev, and this is one of the reasons you're not getting a whole bunch of Fizban questions, because some of these were kind of answered through the animated movie and some backstage conversations. But I will admit that Fizban was one of my favorite characters through this reading. I will admit that I'm not a fan of that whole, like you say, like he's so OP, but at the same time he plays that whole like I don't know what's going on. I'm not a fan of that. But
lifting Ember for no reason was just
okay.
silly.
So I have like 3 questions that were related to that I was going to ask y'all. Of course, they're answered very easily. I could read them, but I mean, like Trev was like, but okay, so like one of them was the whole Fizban's hat situation that comes off like so out of left field. Like, I mean, they're in a situation.
Well, that made sense to me because he wanted the events to happen like they did.
Well, okay, that's what I'm saying. That's the explanation that comes up.
So
But
Fizban sets the table in some of his actions, but there is no explanation for lifting the dragon on the first attempt.
Yeah, before
and then getting
Seston.
it right and getting Seston up there. There was no point to that. That served no overlying, like obviously their little side adventure was to get Ember in the right position and be distracted long enough for our heroes to do what they needed to do and to get the Mayflower or whatever Matafluer's dragon name is, to get Flame Strike in the right position. I can accept all that, but some of the slap, I can even accept him turning into feathers to fake his own death. What I can't accept is why, in this extreme case of divine intervention, are you fucking around with levitation of dragons? And I'm sorry if we're not supposed to swear on here, but it frustrates me more and more that I reread this book.
This is adult show, sir. I mean, we can cater to some kids if they want to, but fair warning, this is for adults. Okay, I mean, my name kind of implies that Evil's Comics. It's if your kids are watching a dude named Evil, let's have some conversations backstage.
Yeah.
Beckermin, I'm going to have to give this one up to the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say it had to have been either the beginning or the end of the author's writing session, and they were strung out in their own direction, and they just had to put a cap on it, and they didn't it skipped the editing floor.
Okay, so
and I think they were trying to be funny because they know their audience is young adults. They were trying to cater to we'll give them some more funny. Like we're about to get a big battle scene. Let's keep some of this lighthearted. But come on, like.
Oh, okay. Well, granted, let's put some perspective on that time and time frame, and paint pictures of other elderly wizards around that time. Because you're talking about Sword in the Stone. You're talking about, the Hobbit. You're talking, and most of the wizards around Fizban's appearance, age, what have, kind of act in the same fashion. So that, I mean, for me, that's why it's not so out of character, because he comes off as a Merlin or like a Tom Bombadil kind of character, someone that knows too much.
Mr. Magoo with OP.
Yeah,
I mean, he is. That's what he is. I want to say there's so much mystery because some of the questions I have, like, is he really having conversations with the trees? And I know it's a joke kind of thing, but like if you think about it, and he is a god, blah blah blah. It gets deeper. Like, was he having conversations with the tree? Was he there? So
that, though.
Was he there so long?
That, Mike. I'm fine with him arguing with the trees because it was to solidify.
The appearance of an old man. Yeah, I get that too.
Yeah, so he was trying to fly under the radar with the hat. The hat makes sense because the hat set the stage.
Yeah, he had to bring he needed the chains to be broken, and what better way to do it than get the dragon to do it,
Yeah.
My only thing that I came up with back in October when I reread it, I am thinking about this now. I do feel, oh, there he is. I do feel that he likes Tasselhoff, and I think he was trying to entertain him.
Yeah.
I want to say that's like that of all there, and I mean the whole group. I mean, because with Task, the whole
in
like
my
him
head.
coming.
Well, and now we see who he is. So he is Paladine. I don't know if we've ever outright said that.
I was trying to make that insinuation.
In my head, I think Paladine was like, you know what? This Kinder is going to have a lot of trials. Let's make him laugh. Hey, dragon.
Okay, so let's talk about something else. Let's paint the other picture where, like, I get the need for I kind of don't and do the need for the divine intervention. Okay, but like, I mean, we get to the point where we get to the room in Fermenard's throne room. He's made his throne room, and that's a pivotal point where we know that a task has to be shown, that painting, to show that there's not just bad dragons, that there's good dragons out there. It also like relates to the readers, because I will admit up until that point it was something that I hadn't thought about. Up until that point, all the dragons in the book are painted in an evil fashion kind of thing, so it didn't even come across that there were good dragons in the world out there, so it kind of paints the two pictures. But we're talking about, like, this is someone that has evidently been there and knew exactly where this painting was, and he does this whole rigmarole of like letting them just lead their way until like there could have been some other scenes where
why haven't we seen the good dragons, Mike? Did you know what are the good dragons? You remember from the painting?
Yeah, it's the one that Huma's writing.
It's the chromatic dragons.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
Gold, dragons. Silver, bro.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen those because the evil god is actually manipulating.
Don't tell him. Okay. I want him to get there.
Yeah, I was like that part has not gone into like why they're all the book has explained to the new reader so far as they just have disappeared since the catalysm kind of thing, and they haven't been around. But that's as far as the bad dragons too, and the clerics and the gods. And
Mike, do you have a spoiler button? When you hit it, it goes burr, burr, burr.
Yeah. No, I don't. And okay, this is something that I think everybody knows me for. I am very spoiler heavy, so go ahead.
Do you want it spoiled?
Okay, if we're going to talk about me specifically, I'm not bothered by spoilers at all, because I still feel like there's a huge process of getting to the information that is the spoiler. I think people that are bothered by spoilers are just bothered.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, honestly, the books have been out for 35 years, so
okay, wait. And before we go there, there's a lot that is spoiled if you watch different iterations or listen, because the audiobook does a little bit of the spoiling. The animated movie does a little bit of the spoiling. And I'm pretty sure if I would have read some of the author's notes that there's some in that too. Especially the way the animated series came off, because the animated series is touching stuff that doesn't even appear until the third book. So I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't know what they were thinking. No, but that's like him being
on Beckerman's comment about why he's all goofy and stuff, because he needs Tasselhoff to perform certain things. He's the one that he's going to get to do the deeds, and he has to entertain Tasselhoff.
Yep. Yeah, he knows his audience, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly.
I want to say it also plays into him knowing that the group already had raced, and the whole book they're kind of like anti-wizard race kind of thing, and like him presenting himself in this like lighthearted fashion kind of helped that situation, because he's not even brought into the suspicion thing until Tanis is like at the last of his line with the whole betrayer thing, because Like at first it's just Gilthanas and Eben, and then they start throwing Raceland, but Raceland's kind of been there the whole book. I don't know why that. Okay, but then it's like, Tanis kind of turns it to Fizban. He kind of lumps them in the two because they're both wizards or whatever. So I want to say it plays a part of that too. Like maybe he knew that much of the group, knowing that they were going to have these issues, and that was part of it, like him doing the whole, goofy Jar Jar Binks thing. Hey, Christina.
What's up, Christine?
Can I make a little theory about Fizban?
Yeah.
Okay, and y'all may disagree with me, but like throughout the whole book, with him being kind of clumsy and oafus and stuff, I always thought that was a play because I don't know. Like when I used to play D&D, I'd see it a lot in a lot of our groups. If there is a divine person in your party, then they tend to rely heavily on that divine person. So he was kind of playing it off like an idiot so they wouldn't suspect that he was a divine person, because he wanted them to figure it out on his own and let humanity do what they do. And it's kind of like, the gods weren't supposed to be there, but he was like, I want to kind of help out.
Yeah, the first time we meet him, he's literally setting the table. That's what.
I was going to bring that up because he went, no, this table needs to sit here because of this.
Yeah, he even knew that dude was going to burn. I mean, I honestly, and appreciate you, Tony, for bringing that up. I think that is kind of the exact answer I need on Fizban. Like, it makes 100%, because you go into, we're talking about gods, and they're trying to manipulate this in forms and fashion, and depending on what literature, media, or whatever you read, gods always have like a level of like what they can do and what they can't do, what they will do and what they won't do. So it's always like a mystery of like, like, okay, because reading this, he did not come off as a god until, I watched the animated and then got it confirmed by the group. But,
that's another trope in Dungeons and Dragons, is
that divine intervention
the good guys play by the rules.
Yeah, and the bad guys, the chaotic. I mean, that's why, like, that's kind of the whole, like, hence, evil attachment to the chaotic, because chaotic is just random. It's not really like a definable nature kind of thing. But to add that on someone's like their alignment level, I mean, it kind of says it all. No, but I always fall back to like the Watcher situation, where you do have sentient beings out there that do have that level of like, well, I can do this, but then I can, I can't do that. So when you're presented a situation like this and you find out that a character has these, it is a god or a goddess or what have you, how much are they a part of this? How much are they manipulating? How much can you Deus Ex Machina, towards them because their presence in the book, kind of thing.
They kind of act like, or at least Fizban kind of acts like Ka.
Yeah, it does in a lot of ways. I can agree with that. Like karma, fate. Yeah, I can agree with that a lot. I can say I appreciate it because it's not something that's like heavily known as far as the reader. I mean, the pieces are there, which I can really appreciate. It is a puzzle that the writers give, the reader for you to figure out, and they're all there. I will say that, like, as a new reader, I read that situation where Fizban turns into the feathers, and I even told Trev, like, in the text message, like, that pissed me off. Like, I did love Fizban that much, and like him dying like that, I was like, meow, like I thought it was some bullshit, like writery. I was all like, that's the way you're gonna kill him, and like especially because the line that Task gives him, it makes absolutely no sense in the Seam of Magic thing, that there could be this like outcome randomly when you cast a spell, like and you put that logic towards every spell that we've encountered, and you're thinking about like what would have happened if you would have cast Fireball and it had the opposite effect of what would that have entailed? Like, would he just have lit himself on fire? Like, Fireball. You know.
Yeah.
That right there is a concept that I don't think I've ever thought about, and I don't know how many different media franchises, blah blah blah, pertain magic, and that's just not a. I mean, you talk about spells can go wrong. That's a concept, but you know, there's always like an opposite to it. No, this is like a whole different concept that you could like cast a spell and like 1 out of 50 it could have the opposite backtrack, but you think about it in the campaign sense of thing, it is like rolling the dice, and like, you know, if you try and cast fireball and it doesn't happen, like there could be
roll a natural one.
I was gonna
yeah,
say
a negative effect.
That's one.
A negative effect, I don't know.
Yeah, it's whatever the DM. I mean, there's a chart that they can roll a 100-sided dice to see the effect of a critical miss, but some DMs just do what they want with the critical miss.
So when Evil Mike was reading that chapter, I can hear it now. He's like, "Fucking Featherfall."
Oh, I was pissed, man. I was pissed, and I'm very expressive with my emotions and stuff. I was in real life. I was like, "Nah!"
I can just imagine it.
I immediately text Trev. I was like, "Oh, fuck that shit." They didn't piss me off or anything, but I was really, you know.
But the feathers then give us our Forrest Gump moment at the wedding. Where the white feather floats off to Tasselhoff Gump. And
it did. I'm talking about in the moment. Okay, so let's get there. So the wedding. The Draconians trapped. They're basically trapped inside that fortress. We get this whole cool thing where the gully doors are the reasons why most of them are being forced inside there. But they all flee to the mountains. They find a valley, thanks to mainly due to Flint, and they rebuild. They have an avalanche that happens, and it blocks off most of the enemies. Back to the whole Ka thing and fate. Alistar marries Goldmoon and Riverwind, both making their rings.
Right.
It said Alistar.
Is it
Alistar? It could have been. Okay, so at this point in the book, if you go look, it keeps flipping back and forth from Alistar and Elistan. So I assume that Elistan was his first name and Alistar was his last name, because it does it like quite often. Well, I'm not making this up. It refers to both Elistan. Like it got to a point where it mentioned Elistan, and I was like, "Who the fuck is Elistan?" I was like, "Where did he come from?" And I write down names. Every name I come across in a book, I highlight it so I can go back to it. And I'm like, "Who the fuck is Elistan?" I'm like, "Where did he come from?" And
that's
like the way
every other seeker asked too, like, why does he get the powers?
Okay, so the way I read it is that's the same person as Elistan Alistar. Okay, so Alistar marries Goldmoon and Riverwind, both making their rings and speaking their vows. Alistar gives a prayer to Paladine, having a wedding dinner. Lorana and Alistar connect and plan to venture further past this book. Tanis and Sturm see Barum alive, but he vanishes. Sturm and Elistan mention going south. Tanis talks to Race, reminding the queen he is still out there. Tass hears this and thanks a Fizzband and a feather drops. And basically that's kind of the end, not so much. There's a song of Huma that happens after that. It has a lot of like, it's poetry, but it has a lot of like supposed hints. The book tells you that it has hints towards the next book. I mean, without context, I mean, it kind of reads like the first kind of Tale of Huma thing. So it's basically like, it reads to me like a path that they might be taking, but I mean, it's hard to tell, like context wise.
Let's pause a second, because I do have a rule here. And I don't care if you're the author of one of my favorite books from when I was in junior high, or if you're a guy I went to high school with, or somebody I work with now. I never want to read your poetry. Message to all of you. I do not. I'm not there for that.
I just want to say it shouldn't be forced upon you. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you have the inkling to read poetry, then all to you. But I don't think it's like, okay, we're going to take a quiz. And I'm a book reader. I read about like maybe 100, 150 books a year, something like that. Like, I've come across poetry in a lot of those books, and there's never been one piece of poetry where I was like, man, that was amazing. I'm so glad they added that in there. Or, man, that cleared up so much of what's going on. Like Stephen King loves throwing poetry in there. And there's never been a time I was all like, yep, that relates to the story, or yep, that cleared up some shit, or yep, that was just cool. Like, is that just me?
I gotta say that the first time that I read that, though, the next book I bought was The Legend of Huma.
I would have too. I'll tell you that. If I didn't have to wait on this whole thing, there's some paths I would have took. And I'm not saying that the poetry is bad. Honestly, as poetry go, I mean, in context, it's poetry that's within this, and it just tells the story. Another part of the song.
It just tells a little bit more information in poetry form.
And I want to say there's a lot of context clues in there. Let's read the first paragraph, and I can give you, like, out of the village, out of the thatched and clutching shires, out of the grave and furrow grave, where his sword first tried, the last cruel dances in childhood awoke to the shrines. So, I mean, like, right now, it just sounds like, like out of his, like, misery and all that, he finally got his sword back, and then it sounds like some other clerics are awakened, or maybe some other gods or something like that, but like I said, without context, it's hard to kind of gauge what's coming based on that. It's not like it's a true, like, hey, this is coming in the next book, look forward to this kind of thing, which I don't know if I need that in books. Sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't. I can go with the poetry thing, because usually when I come across poetry, it's like a option of reading it, so you either can, or you don't have to, kind of thing. And night, Steve, thanks for being here, man. You have a good night. Be safe.
For the record, I'm checking Beckermin off of my poetry reading list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank God.
I also don't want you to hear descriptions of your dreams unless I'm in them.
Well,
no, I do like that. I do like that.
There's so much to share.
And that just tells me that just told me that if I ever decide to write a poem about Beckermin, he's not going to read it. So,
yeah, say whatever axe you've got to grind with me, Tony. Do it in poem form, and I'll never see it.
At least you know before you try.
With nobody. I ain't even got an axe. I got swords, but no axe.
You know what? Caveat: unless it rhymes. If you want to rhyme that shit, I might go in for a few verses.
You can't have a poem that don't rhyme.
There was once a man named Beckermin.
Actually, that's where, like, I find the faulty of poetry, because I'm not a big fan of the whole, like, needing to rhyme. Like, I do like poetry. Like, this poetry in here, it doesn't rhyme. It's just, it's just some lines that we're calling it poetry, but in a sense, it's not really poetry.
All right, before we start discussing the rules of iambic pentameter, let's just move on.
Hey, words are important, okay?
God, Dave, this is fucking high school. Get that shit out of here.
Yeah, I'm not so specific on stuff like that, but I generally stay away from poetry. But
yeah, good advice for us all.
On a general note, I enjoyed this. As far as the ending goes, I want to say the ending is a little sped up with the wedding and everything, but I don't know if I needed that drawn out kind of thing. I mean, they're just kind of getting us set up for the next book. I will say it's not like the best of endings. It's a little bleak, like, I mean, because they are like having to restart and rebuild, and and then there's some heartache in that's never shown on camera or in film, I mean, but I mean, they are all safe. That for the moment, they are all protected, kind of thing. It sounds like for a couple generations, kind of thing.
We talked about it, and it actually, at the end of the annotated series, there's a note from one of the authors that when they finished writing the first book and they were getting ready to present it to the Veeps, as they called the managers over at TSR, they ultimately, when they did finally have a meeting with them, they gave them the green light to continue with the trilogy. But they said, just make sure you put a bow on that first book. I'm paraphrasing. Just make sure you put a bow on it, just in case. Like it does. They wanted it to be a full loot book. And I think that was touched on like a few minutes ago. So it was in their minds, and maybe that had to do with the wedding. That could have been a reason it could have been thrown in. Who knows?
I want to say, that presents a good picture. Does it? I mean, could you read this, one off by itself and be satisfied as a reader? I want to say yes. Like on some levels, no. There are a bunch of questions that, like for a month now, I've been wanting answered. I've been wanting to move on to the next book so bad. Okay, but I mean, as far as like if there never was another book and this is all I got, honestly, we got everything we need from here. I mean, we did get the main battle with Lord Verminard. They did save what they set out to do, kind of thing. And I honestly, when I was thinking of D&D books back in the day, that was kind of my envision, that all their books were just one-off stories. I had no idea there were these, massive, like ever expanding stories kind of thing. So it is, I generally appreciate it to be like this. Getting a trilogy for the first set is a real cool thing kind of thing.
Wait till you get the drifts.
I know, buddy. We'll get there. That's slow pace.
It's a long way to go.
Yeah.
We'll be there in the summer.
At our current rate, yeah. I think he's right.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
Well, guys, we are at the end of this book finally, and we have touched base on all chapters. We've done all the questions. That's all I got. If anybody else wants, I mean, there's some cool things I can touch base on. The animated movie was, even though it's not the greatest animation, it is a very excellent, adaptation of this story up until some of the parts of the end. It's mainly very accurate to the story. I'd say it's not so much as it gets less accurate. It gets maybe too super accurate because there's a lot of spoilers stuff that the first book doesn't go into, specifically with the Paladine and being Fizban, and
so they jump a little.
Yeah, because the movie outright says that. It's just they don't even play around with it. Because he has a conversation with like Mishkal, like in some space looking astral thing, and I mean it's like, I want to say 30 minutes in the film that it's revealed that he's Paladin. There's no playing around.
It must have had some hype because it had a couple big names in the cast. With Kiefer Sutherland.
Yeah, Kiefer Sutherland doing Raceland.
Michael Rosenbaum was in it.
And honestly, now when I hear Raceland in my head, that I got Kiefer Sutherland's voice, it's like, for me, it's so spot on. Like that's kind of the way he already sounded when I was reading the book, and the audiobook version kind of sounds like that in two regard, but then you get the animated with Kiefer Sutherland, and he lays it on. That I really appreciated it. Now it's there. That's his voice.
Seeing that they came that far with the cartoon version, it just gives me hope that one day some director-writer combo is going to have the courage to actually make a legit trilogy out of these movies.
Yeah.
Yep.
I would love to see this in live action form or like TV or movie. I mean, could you imagine if this was broken down into TV? I mean, this could be like Game of Thrones epic or, Wheel of Time. That they could do a fantastic job with this. And it's such a, honestly, in a writer kind of stand, it's such an easy thing to do kind of thing. It's one scene and the next. There's not a lot of inquisition in between. It's fairly simple. I don't know why.
TV show is that there's a longer time span, so a lot can happen with the individual lives of people. Things can change. People could unfortunately die or move on or what have you. When you lock it into a movie script, it's more certain that it's actually going to happen. But I would love to have that span out. Even look at Game of Thrones. I mean, over what was the last season, as good as the content was, it was just sped up because they had other things that they had to do.
Well, that had a lot of issues. I mean, the biggest issue is they went faster than he was writing the books. He's not done with the books yet. Like that to me is like the weirdest decision. Yeah, let's make a show based on this book that's not finished yet. Are y'all gonna go past the books? Yes. um, I don't know. No, but I go back to the Harry Potter thing and what you were saying. You know, it does take. You know, it it's a big steal either way. It's like if you do it in movie form and you have so many books, it's like, to me, it depends on if you do three, like a Lords of the Rings style thing, and you do a 3-set movie. I think it can be achieved. And agreed, TV shows, depending on how long you span it out, especially if you're doing like one season a book or one season half a book, shit, yeah, you really have to worry about that aging actors and or potentially other forms of life stepping in, kind of thing. No, but I'm totally on board. Like, I don't know why this hasn't been made into a full-on game. Like, and I do know that there was game like D&D specific video games that led up into this point. Pool Radiance, like, directly ties into that, and that was one of the major games. And there are a couple other Dragonlance games like Hills Far and some other ones, but they're not directly tied to this story. So
you know the Warriors of Krynn game that came out 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. So
the board game,
D&D/board game, yeah.
Yeah. I picked it up.
Yeah, I did. I do know about that, but I don't know why it hasn't been captivated in other forms of media. Like, why we haven't gotten, you know, like I mean, this could be a massive video. I mean, like, but we just got Baldur's Gate.
Hopefully, Vox Machina is going to change that, because Vox Machina is huge.
Yeah, the popularity and.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is an area of the media that we're missing, is this whole fantasy medieval. It's not really tapped on a lot, and I mean there's so much. I mean, just in this one franchise alone, and we've only touched on one base. You're talking about potential for, you know, either multiple movies, TV show. I mean, it's to be, it's like printing money. Like, why aren't they? You know, it either goes back to like, I mean, because now Hasbro owns this, and you know, so it's like it always goes back to like, why are y'all holding this back? You know, like, why when we got that D&D movie, how come this wasn't the D&D movie that y'all chose to do? Why was it Honor Among Thieves? And I'm not complaining about Honor Among Thieves or the 2000 D&D movie, even though I could. You know, it's not the greatest of movies, but like, why didn't we get this style of, you know, D&D story kind of thing? I will say, as a reader, this was fantastic, because I was a little bit worried on how this was going to go. I wasn't sure on, you know, how far in the world building it was going to get, you know, because that could be overbearing for a new reader and stuff like that. It's one of the biggest drawbacks for me in Tolkien. Even though I love Tolkien, I think he goes too heavy into the world building sometimes. Every character you meet, it's like, hey, this is Beckermin. His nickname is also Mike. His second name is also Bobby. He lives in Kansas City. He grew up, you know, in a nice town.
Somebody
mom's
likes
name
the book
is
of Matthew a little bit too much.
This book was dialogue thick, not necessarily heavy. I'm currently rereading the first Deathgate Cycle novel. Any of you guys read Dragonwing? Same authors, Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. They have a 7-book series called the Deathgate Cycle. But I've noticed I'm about 80 pages in, and it's actually reverse. It is more just descriptive heavy, and it has that more Tolkien. There's a lot less dialogue, but when there is, I find myself waiting for it. Even though the story, I remember it honestly almost as epic as Dragonlance, and there's a fraction of the books that you have to get through. But I'm seeing a huge contrast in the style just on that note alone. It's interesting you brought it up.
I'm gonna need you to send me a picture of that book, so I can remember the series, because it's something I will
get it to you guys.
Because I will, you know, Trev has mentioned this is one of his favorite writer, you know, author combos, and I really enjoyed their writing style. You know, even though it was explained that Margaret Weis at that time was established writer, and at that time he had written, like, I think 2 other books before this. I wouldn't really call him an established writer, so per se. He was more video game designer, like script writer kind of thing. I really appreciate the style that was in this book. It was very easy. There wasn't a moment where it was boring. There wasn't a moment where it was just infuriating. I mean, overall, I generally like the pace, the world building, there was a lot in there. So it was really nice, especially for a first book into a massive trilogy, a massive, campaigning story kind of thing. Anybody have anything else to say? We're going a little long, 3 minutes over. Not that I'm complaining, but just pointing it out.
All I'm going to say is I'm looking forward to the next book because we got a little footnote at the beginning of the book when they were at the end of the last home about a certain character that we're going to see prominently in the next book.
I have not looked at. I have not even read the synopsis on the back of the book. I have not. Like I've wanted, no, I've waited until we, finish this and we're getting there. But you're talking about like the biggest one in the world. I have the audiobook ready to go. I have my highlighters. No.
Now, I'm not talking about the one I've been waiting for because I screwed up and said that character was in the second one when I was wrong, and they actually that character premieres in the third one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about somebody else that had relatives in this first book.
Uth Major.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna say that you can spoil characters all day as long as you don't go that. I don't think there's anything wrong with mentioning a name, a presence, something like that.
I was just
again.
The next book's my
we know
favorite.
KTR. We know KTR. We know she's coming.
Yeah.
And I would hope so, because that's one of the things I'd say I was disappointed on, is there's such a buildup of KTR. And yes, I did know that we were reading a trilogy, and but like, I mean, she could have popped in for like a second, bro. Like, the whole book was like a basic.
It feels like it could have ended with her, right? Like she's somewhere hearing a report, maybe, or something.
That was how the animated movie ended.
Yeah, that is how the anime movie ended.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, because there is a huge buildup on KTR, and we never. I mean, she's just absent the whole book, and not only that, but we get like the minimalist information, towards her kind of thing. So I could say that as a new reader, that was a little disappointing. Is they spent a lot of buildup for her, but and play off in this book kind of thing.
Is the Dragonlance animated movie streaming anywhere?
I watched it on YouTube for free. Like it was just like somebody had it, the whole movie in one. But if not,
I'll send it your way.
Yeah, I was about to say if it's not still on YouTube, because sometimes they will flag that stuff and take it down. I can send you some other links. I
no,
get you.
You won't.
Oh yeah. Because they got
Remember
it on Amazon.
That about me? I'm not that guy.
No, because I can rent it for you and send it to you.
Well, yeah, I'll rent it somewhere. That's fine. But I just wondered if it was on a streaming service. Don't make me party to a crime, please.
No, I'm not talking about no pirates. I'm not talking about no pirates. I know that about you.
I was going to say I'm pretty consistent.
Go on Amazon. I'm sorry.
You're good.
I do know they have it on.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, on Amazon, they do have it on Vudu. And I know on Vudu it's like $1.99. But I want to say on that's how I watched it, was on YouTube, and like I want to say it's actually up there by Hasbro maybe, but don't quote me on that one.
I don't remember.
I watched it fairly easy. Like as soon as I searched for it, it wasn't something I had to pirate. It was something that was like easily accessible. Something like that. Yeah, but that's it. That's go ahead.
I was gonna say, here we go. This and the sticker on it shows my age. There we go.
Oh, is it a Blockbuster video? Hold on.
Yeah, it's a Blockbuster.
Damn.
Wow.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Got it for $1 in the days of Blockbuster.
I enjoyed it. I would say if I would have watched that before I read this book, I probably would have hated it because the animation. I mean, they for Okay, it's like a mix of animated with 3D animation, and to me,
Yeah.
the animation is decent. It's where they try to mix in the 3D animation. It's kind of the fault of it, and it's like all the dragons are done in that. Then it's like that's supposed to be the cooler part, but it comes off as the cringier part because they didn't age so well.
Ooh, let's talk cringy real quick.
Yeah.
Wedding. We got some wedding cringe.
What did you like about the wedding?
Just when Tika's like, maybe this isn't something to be feared.
Man, I forgot about that. What was that pertaining to?
When Gold Moon walks down the aisle and she thinks about her wedding night and everything.
She wants her a man.
And maybe sex isn't this thing to be feared. Maybe there is something to be said.
Yeah, I do remember that now that you mentioned sex. I do remember that there was this whole like
cringe alert.
Okay, I wanna like my thinking goes into that is like you had a male and a female writing the book. And like
times.
well yeah, okay,
You
so
don't know if
like
they're religious.
that too, and like I wanna say like okay, you don't want to go like too far into the whole D&D trope where it's like I'm the barbarian, that girl's mine, I'm taking her to bed, and we almost saw that. But in the same regard, like I mean, he was working with the lady, so like it kind of presents well to like kind of throw that in there, like, and I'm not saying that he wrote that
before OnlyFans, Beckerman. Come on.
Right.
Oh, I understand, and I also think it's kind of cute that she had to get Flint to dance with her because Caraman had access to a buffet.
He finally got to eat. I mean, we were like how many chapters?
I just picture him going to town on ribs as Tika's like, "Aren't you gonna dance with me?" He's like,
"No, I'm not." That conversation bothered the hell out of me, and no, but I will say that was brought up like not by one character, but like all the female characters was their hesitation towards sex. Like it was brought up in this like, well, maybe it's not so scary, but it is scary kind of situation. And it wasn't like once or twice; it was like 3 times in the book. I'll say because it was like the Tika and Caramel, and then it was like the River Wind, and it was even brought up like twice with the River. I don't know. I want to chalk that up to the male and female like writer team. I don't know.
When did they write this set, Jesse? Was this in the 80s or 90s?
84.
No, the one.
Which set are we talking?
The Death Cycle.
1990, wasn't it? I just looked it up myself.
Oh, you're muted.
Oh.
No, Jesse.
Oh, Jesse is.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, yeah. I don't have the year.
Okay.
Give me a second. I was gonna say I just saw it earlier.
It's older though. It's not like
when I was younger. Trev, I actually read 2 other trilogies by these authors, and I just got reminded of them. There's the Dark Sword trilogy and the Rose of the Prophet.
I've read the Dark Sword.
Yeah. I have the first Dark Sword. I found that.
Trev, they came out from 1990 to 1994.
Wow. Okay.
But they were written in the mid 80s.
And there's a funny character in that series. I'm doing this one for Tater here. It's a little spoiler. There's a wizard. There's a wizard in the series, but his name's not Fizban.
Really?
It's Zifnab.
Oh, wow.
If you want to write the 2 down and scramble them up, you might be entertained by that.
Right. They come out to the same outcome.
Yeah. There's no relation though.
No relation.
Or is there? I don't know.
Kind of reminds me of another Stephen King thing with Randall Flagg, huh? And Martin and
right.
And I like that. That we have this like ever scoping, wizard that's kind of moving around this dude's written works. I like that. Honestly, I can get behind something like that. Did Trev have facial hair before? Yeah, a little bit. He's blonde, so it always looks. That's why I mess with him in the eyebrows. He's got eyebrows, people. No, I'm really looking forward to the next book. I mean, this is fantastic, and just the fact that it's a lot of people's favorite, like, you know, in the D&D series, you know, there's a lot of love with the Dragonlance series. I'm really excited as a new reader, kind of thing.
I'm
It was
excited for the first quarter of the next book. Once it just kicks it off so well, and I mean, yeah, I'm looking forward to just getting started with that one. It's been
my expectations are Empire Strikes Back, you know, leading into Return of the Jedi. So I hope, and Two Towers and Return of the King. You know, I'm looking forward.
Didn't this book have a New Hope type ending?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Destroyed the base and have a wedding.
Yeah, it did. It did. I wouldn't say they had a lot of Star Wars like comparisons, but I will say it did. You know, it does. It does have that feel, as far as I could see the second ending with an Empire Strikes Back ending, and the third one picking up with the return. You know, I could see that being but I could see them, you know, going away from that. You know, I don't know, but I will say, reading this and getting to the end of it, I will say I kind of have that expectation of that's the format that we might get for the next two books. Like, I already have that in my mind, that's kind of, we might see some people die, or we might, you know, we might be left at a cliffhanger where it seems like some people, you know, something like that. Kind of like the Fizzband thing, but not so much heavily hinted, you know, with the feather.
Yeah.
But guys, we're going long. This is finally the end of Dragons of Autumn and Twilight, the first book in this Dragonlance series. I want to thank, you know, this fine panel of you know, people discussing this book with me. I got Trev, Beckermin, Tony, and Jesse. Man, thanks to everybody that has shown up. We're going to get out of here. We will be back in 2 weeks to talk about the second book, which is Dragons of Winter Night in the series. And we're going to see how it goes from there, kind of thing. I don't know. But guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for watching. I'll see y'all later.
Later.